Her name is Amaka. She's 36 years old and she teaches primary school in Akwa Etiti, a small town in Anambra State. She teaches social studies, which means she is the person the children in her school come to when they have questions about government, about how Nigeria works, about why things are the way they are. Last term, a 10-year-old boy raised his hand in her class and asked a question she was not expecting. He said, "Teacher, if my father voted for the PDP governor and the governor became APC without another election, whose governor is he now?" Amaka paused. She had not prepared for that question in her lesson plan. She gave the best answer she could, that in Nigeria, a governor can change his party while staying in office. The boy thought about it for a moment and then said, "But teacher, my father's vote didn't change." The boy is 10 years old. He has not studied political science, but he has understood something that political analysts sometimes take pages to explain, that a defection changes a governor's party card, but it does not automatically change the votes of the people who elected him. What is happening in Amaka's classroom is really about a question that is going to be tested at the ballot box in 2027 in ways that will tell us more about Nigerian democracy than any political speech or press conference ever could. The question is simple but profound. In Nigerian presidential elections, does governor-level political defection actually translate into presidential votes, or is there a documented historical gap between the political map that governors draw and the choices that voters make when the booth closes and the ballot is secret? Before we go deeper, I just want to say thank you. Since NaijaNewsWatch started, the support, the comments, the likes, and every single subscription have helped this channel grow beyond what I imagined. If you have been enjoying these in-depth political breakdowns and you want to see more videos like this, the best way to support the channel is by subscribing. It really motivates me to keep researching, digging deeper, and bringing you clear, fact-based analysis. Now let us get into the story, because what happens next changes everything. Let us set the foundation, because to understand why defections don't always win elections, you need to understand the specific assumption behind them and where the historical evidence pushes back. The assumption behind the current wave of governor defections to the APC, at least 7 governors since 2023, across the South-South, Southeast, and other regions, is that governor alignment produces presidential votes. The logic is straightforward. A governor controls the state party secretariat, the state party chairman, and through those structures, the local government chairman and ward executives. These officials are the ground-level mobilizers who communicate the political message to communities, who organize transport to polling units, who deploy party agents to protect results at collation level. When a governor's machinery is working for a presidential candidate, these officials work for that candidate. That is real and significant. The second mechanism is public resource allocation, what analysts call patronage. A governor who controls state budget decisions, LGA project allocation, and government contract awards can use those resources to reward politically compliant communities and signal to communities that political compliance produces material benefit. This is the patronage system that Nigerian political science has documented extensively. The third mechanism, and its limit, is the secret ballot. The 1999 Constitution and the Electoral Act established that presidential elections are conducted by secret ballot. The BVAS technology, the biometric voter accreditation system deployed by INEC in 2023, has made accreditation more transparent and harder to manipulate in some ways. But the fundamental protection of the secret ballot means that a voter who is accredited at their polling unit can vote for whoever they choose, regardless of what their LGA chairman communicated, regardless of what project was allocated to their community, regardless of what their governor's party card says. The gap between the second mechanism, patronage, and the third, the secret ballot, is where the historical divergence between governor alignment and presidential voter behavior lives. A governor can point his machinery at a presidential candidate. He cannot go inside the polling booth with every voter. The anti-defection provision in the Constitution, which applies to legislators but not to governors, creates a fourth structural factor. As we have covered in previous videos, a governor who defects faces no legal consequence, but the voters who elected that governor on a specific party platform did not change their original political preference just because their governor changed his party card. The legal permission for governors to defect does not produce political permission from the voters who elected them. Now let us go deep. This is where the historical pattern becomes analytically precise and where the 2027 implications become specific. Let us start with what the research and the election record actually shows about how Nigerian presidential elections are decided, because this is the foundation for understanding why defections are not automatic presidential deliveries. Political scientists who study Nigerian elections consistently document a distinction between what they call structure votes and preference votes. Structure votes are the votes that the governor's machinery produces through patronage, through party mobilization, through community political networks that work within the governor's influence. Preference votes are the votes that individual voters cast based on their own independent assessment of the presidential candidates, their policies, their identity, their perceived character, their connection to specific community interests. In Nigerian presidential elections, both types of votes matter. But the historical record shows that the ratio of structure votes to preference votes is not constant. It varies by region, by the strength of the community's civil society institutions, and, critically, by the degree to which any given presidential candidate triggers a preference-based motivation that overrides the structural pressure. The 2023 election provides the clearest available evidence. The obedient movement, which produced the Labour Party's performance across multiple unexpected states, was almost entirely preference vote-driven. According to analysts, the Labour Party had no governor, no LGA chairman, no community patronage network anywhere. What it had was a candidate who triggered a strong enough preference vote among a specific demographic that millions of individual voters made independent decisions to vote for him despite what the structural environment around them was communicating. Plateau State in 2023 is the single clearest case study. Governor Simon Lalong, a former APC governor who was running for Senate in the same 2023 cycle, was APC. The structural environment of Plateau State was APC-dominated, and yet Peter Obi won Plateau State in the presidential race. The preference vote, driven by Middle Belt Christian community anxieties about the Muslim-Muslim ticket and by Obi's specific appeal to young educated voters, overcame the structural alignment. Lagos is the second case study. Tinubu governed Lagos for 8 years. His successor, Jide Sanwo-Olu, won the Lagos governorship in 2023 on an APC platform. Lagos is the deepest, most resourced APC state machinery in Nigeria, and yet Obi won Lagos in the presidential race. Now here's the pattern interrupt. The two states where preference votes most powerfully overcame structural alignment in 2023 are the two states that are most relevant to the current wave of defections. Lagos is Tinubu's stronghold, and the opposition won it against him at the height of his political power in his home city with his machinery fully deployed. The South-South states that have now defected to the APC, Delta, Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, and Rivers, are states with strong community civil society institutions, historically assertive voting behavior, and communities whose political preferences have been documented as less easily controlled by governor-level patronage than many other regions. What this means for 2027 is specific. 7 governors have crossed to the APC. That crossing gives APC 7 additional state party machines working for Tinubu's re-election. It does not give APC 7 automatic presidential deliveries. Whether those machines produce deliveries depends on a question that no defection announcement can answer. How strong is the preference vote in those communities? And how effectively do the alternative candidates, Obi, Atiku, or whoever emerges as the strongest opposition, motivate that preference vote? The silent players in this story are the community-level institutions whose political guidance shapes whether the preference vote activates in any given community. The town union associations, the women's cooperative networks, the local CAN chapters in the South-South, the obedient community groups that are still active in urban centers, all of these institutions shape the information environment around voters in ways that governor machinery cannot fully suppress. The most consequential current example is the documented tension in the South-South between the governor-level APC alignment and the community-level resistance from organizations like the Pan-Niger Delta Forum and the Ijaw youth groups. That tension is not hypothetical, it is publicly documented, and it represents exactly the institutional structure through which a preference vote can activate against a governor's structural alignment. Let me give you 3 specific historical cases where governor alignment failed to deliver presidential results in Nigeria, because the historical pattern is the most credible evidence available. Case 1. The 2015 PDP Southwest failure. In 2015, the PDP had the governorship of Ekiti and Oyo. It had the incumbency of President Jonathan, it had federal machinery deployed aggressively, and yet APC's Muhammadu Buhari won both states at the presidential level. The preference vote for change for Buhari's perceived integrity overrode the PDP structure in states where PDP governor machinery was operational. Case 2. The 2023 Labour Party performance in PDP-controlled states. In 2023, the PDP controlled Oyo State through Governor Makinde. Obi won Oyo State in the presidential race. In Akwa Ibom, the PDP had the governorship. Obi significantly overperformed in Akwa Ibom relative to any pre-election prediction.
The preference vote for Obi cut through the PDP structural environment in states where the PDP governor was not actively campaigning against him. Case 3. Anambra's historical pattern. Anambra State has been governed by APGA for over a decade. Presidential election results in Anambra have not consistently tracked APGA's gubernatorial dominance. Presidential candidates from both APC and PDP have won Anambra presidential votes, despite APGA's control of the state machinery, because the Anambra electorate is among the most politically independent and economically self-sufficient in Nigeria. Now, if what I just laid out surprises you, drop a comment below. I want to know your take before we get to the part that changes the whole picture. Let us come back to Amaka and the 10-year-old boy in her classroom in Awka Etiti. The boy asked, "Whose governor is he now?" And he followed it with, "My father's vote didn't change." The boy has articulated the central insight of this entire video. A governor's defection changes his party card. It does not change the votes of the people who elected him. And the 2027 election will test, in concrete INEC-authenticated numbers, whether the 7 governors who crossed to the APC brought their communities' votes with them, or whether the communities exercised the same independent judgment that the 2023 election record shows Nigerian voters are capable of. For ordinary Nigerians like Amaka, who will vote in 2027, who will watch the results come in, who will assess whether the political system they are part of is responsive to their preferences, the defection question is fundamentally a question about democratic accountability. If governor defections produce automatic presidential deliveries, then the message to every Nigerian voter is your individual vote is manageable. Your political preferences can be overridden by elite-level decisions made without your participation. If governor defections do not automatically produce presidential deliveries, if the 2023 pattern of preference votes overriding structural alignment repeats in 2027, the message is the opposite. The ballot is sovereign, the booth is private, and the decision made inside it by millions of individual Nigerians with their own reasons for their own choices is the decision that actually governs. For ordinary Nigerians like Amaka's students' families run in Awka Etiti, the political accountability question has a direct economic dimension. A government that governs knowing it might lose because preference votes can override structural alignment manages public money differently from a government that governs knowing the election result is structurally predetermined. The accountability pressure that comes from genuine electoral competition is an economic governance benefit that every ordinary Nigerian has a stake in. The international dimension of the defection versus delivery question is specific and connects to how Nigeria's 2027 election is assessed internationally. International election monitoring bodies, the African Union, ECOWAS, the European Union, the Carter Center, assess the quality of Nigerian elections partly through the robustness of competitive pressure. an election in which every major state's governor is aligned with the incumbent and in which that alignment is assumed to automatically produce presidential results, is an election whose competitive quality is assessed at the lowest level of the monitoring framework. But international monitors also look at actual voter behavior, the results that come from the polling units, the BVAS accreditation records, the IREV transmission data. If the 2027 results show significant divergence between governor party alignment and presidential voting patterns, if voters in defecting states choose differently from their governors in presidential voting, that divergence is documented evidence that the Nigerian electorate exercises independent judgment. That evidence improves Nigeria's democratic quality assessment regardless of which candidate it benefits. For Nigerians in the diaspora, the defection question has a specific practical relevance. The communities that sent remittances home to families in defecting states, Delta, Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, Enu, are communities whose political preferences and home country family political advice can shape how their relatives vote. A Nigerian diaspora who is politically engaged and who communicates with family members back home is a channel through which preference votes can be activated independent of whatever the governor's party machinery is communicating. Let me address what people on both sides are getting wrong about defections and elections. The first misconception from opposition optimists is that because defections do not automatically produce presidential deliveries, the APC's structural consolidation is irrelevant or easily overcome. It is not irrelevant. Governor-level alignment does produce real electoral advantages: party agent mobilization, community patronage, security deployment, and result protection capacity at coalition level that the structural voter analysis does not fully capture. The 2023 preference vote successes for the Labour Party happened in a specific context, a highly motivated, self-organizing movement with unusual grassroots energy. That specific context may or may not replicate in 2027 for the NDC or ADC. The historical cases where preference votes overcame structural alignment are specific. They required specific conditions of voter motivation that needed to be present simultaneously. The second misconception from APC strategists and supporters is that 7 governor defections produce a clean and reliable pathway to 7 presidential deliveries in 2027. The historical record does not support this confidence. The 3 cases presented earlier, the 2015 PDP Southwest failures, the 2023 Labour Party overperformance in PDP states, and Anambra's historical pattern all show that governor alignment and presidential voter behavior can diverge significantly. The specific characteristics of each defecting state, the independence of its civil society institutions, the strength of the preference vote for alternative candidates, and the community's history of split-ticket voting matter enormously. And the South-South states that have just defected are among the most community-independent, most historically assertive voting states in Nigeria. The third misconception from both sides is that the 2027 elections outcome will be determined primarily by the defection map rather than by the candidates and their campaigns. Defections shape the structural environment. They do not determine the result. The quality and intensity of the opposition's preference vote campaign, whether it reaches and activates the community-level institutions whose guidance matters most to voters who don't follow party lines, will be at least as determinative as the governor-level structural alignment. Here is what to watch and what the signals will tell you about whether defections will or will not deliver in 2027. First signal: early independent polling in defecting states. if any credible independent polling organization conducts surveys of presidential preference in Delta, Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, or Enugu specifically, asking voters in those states who they intend to vote for in the 2027 presidential election, the results will be the clearest available leading indicator of whether defection governor is producing voter alignment or voter resistance. The absence of credible independent polling in these states is itself a governance gap because without it, both the APC and the opposition are making strategic decisions based on assumptions about voter behavior rather than evidence. The second signal, community civil society engagement in defecting states. Watch whether Pan-Niger Delta Forum, Naija National Congress, or major South-South town union associations issue any formal public statement about the 2027 presidential race. These organizations are the institutional channels through which community-level preference votes are organized. Their engagement, or silence, tells you whether the preference vote is being mobilized independent of the governor machinery. The third signal, whether the 2027 cycle produces any documented split-ticket results in the preliminary local and state elections that occur before the presidential race. LGA council elections, state supplementary races, and any off-cycle races in defecting states before 2027 will be early tests of whether voters in those states are following the governor's party or exercising independent judgment. Watch for any off-cycle electoral result in a defecting state that diverges from the governor's alignment.
It would be the earliest confirmed evidence of the preference vote operating against structural alignment. Best case scenario for democratic quality. The 2027 results in defecting states show significant divergence between gubernatorial party alignment and presidential voter behavior. Specifically, opposition candidates performing above what pure structural analysis would predict. This outcome would confirm that the Nigerian electorate exercises meaningful independent judgment, that the secret ballot functions as a genuine check on elite-level political manipulation, and that the democratic accountability mechanism is operating. Whoever wins the election wins in a context where the result reflects genuine competitive dynamics rather than structural predetermination. Worst-case scenario for democratic quality. The 2027 results in defecting states show clean alignment between governor party and presidential vote. Every defecting governor successfully delivers his state for Tinubu with minimal divergence. This outcome would confirm that structural control of patronage networks, party machinery, and result collation infrastructure is capable of overriding independent voter preference, even where preference vote motivation exists. It would not prove that preference votes did not exist, only that they were not sufficient to overcome the structural environment. And it would send a specific signal to the 10-year-old boy in Amaka's classroom. Your father's vote did change, not at the ballot box, but in the space between the ballot box and the result sheet. Let us go back to Amaka's classroom in Awka-Etiti. The 10-year-old boy asked whose governor his father now has, and he noted that his father's vote did not change. Here is the honest, complete answer to what that observation means for the 2027 election. The boy is right. The vote did not change. The preference did not change. What changed is the political environment, the machinery, the patronage, the structural alignment within which that preference will be expressed in 2027. And whether the preference survives the structural environment, whether it translates from a personal intention into a counted ballot, depends on factors that are still being determined right now, in the decisions being made by community institutions in defecting states, in the campaign strategies of opposition candidates, and in the operational integrity of the 2027 electoral process. The historical record is clear on one thing. Political defections in Nigeria are not automatic presidential deliveries. The 2015 PDP Southwest failure, the 2023 Labour Party performance in PDP-controlled states, and the specific INEC verified results from Plateau, Nasarawa, and Lagos all confirm that Nigerian voters are capable of split-ticket behavior,
of electing one party's governor while voting for another party's president. That capability is one of the most important democratic assets the Nigerian electorate possesses. My measured conclusion: defections give the APC real electoral advantages heading into 2027. They give it state party machines, LGA patronage networks, community political infrastructure, and result protection capacity. They do not give it the vote of every Nigerian who lives in a defecting state. The gap between the structural advantage and the electoral delivery is exactly the space that democratic competition is supposed to occupy, and exactly the space that the opposition's preference vote campaign must fill at scale in communities that have already shown they are capable of voting differently from their governors, if the motivation is strong enough. The question I want to leave you with is this. Based on the historical evidence we have walked through today, the 2023 results in Plateau, Nasarawa, and Lagos, and the pattern of preference votes overriding structural alignment in specific conditions, do you believe that the communities in defecting South-South and Southeast states will vote differently from their governors in the 2027 presidential race, or do you think the structural advantages of governor alignment will prove decisive this time? Drop your honest answer in the comments. Before you go, I just want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with NaijaNewsWatch today. Your support means more than you probably realize. Every view, every thoughtful comment, every like, every share, and every subscription helps this channel continue to grow and gives me the motivation to keep researching and creating balanced, in-depth documentaries about Nigerian politics. If today's video gave you a clearer understanding of what is happening beyond the headlines, please share it with someone who would appreciate it too. Thank you for being a part of this community. I will see you in the next documentary. Until then, stay informed, keep asking questions, and as always, stay sharp.